Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're getting right to the heart of the National Ambulance Service strike and what this core divide actually means for Irish families. Let's look straight at the data. Okay, let's dive into this because the stakes for ordinary folks right across the country are just massively high. Now, that recent 24-hour stoppage by ambulance workers, thankfully, it passed off without a major mishap. But look at this, a full quarter, 25% of all ambulance callouts in Ireland are classed as major incidents. When industrial action hits our emergency services, it's not just a minor headache, we're literally talking about potential life or death situations for Irish families. The contingency plans held up this time, absolutely. But that 25%, that is the stark reality of what's truly on the line here.
Section 1. Who was actually affected? Let's talk about the reality on the ground for working families. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark geographic divide in the care that was actually available on the day. If you're living up in Dublin, the impact of the strike was significantly muted. Why is that? Well, because Dublin Fire Brigade's ambulance service was just operating as normal. But the minute you step outside the M50 and head down the country, it was a totally different story. For rural and regional families, non-emergency users were genuinely inconvenienced. We're talking about people needing routine transport between hospitals or help with situations that might not be life-threatening but are still incredibly distressing. It really shows how a national dispute can have a wildly uneven impact, just depending on where you happen to live in Ireland.
Section 2. The Worker and HSE Divide. Let's get into the financial and contractual nuts and bolts of this dispute. So, back in July, the Workplace Relations Commission, the WRC, brokered a deal between the HSE and the two main unions. And to be fair, the government and the HSE did put some significant percentages on the table to try and sort this out. They offered a specific pay rise ranging anywhere from 3 right up to 14%. And that was on top of a general 9.25% increase coming from the wider 2024 to 2026 Public Service Pay Agreement. Now, looking at those numbers, you'd probably wonder why an agreement wasn't just signed right there and then, wouldn't you?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this single figure right here, 33,000 euros. That is the starting salary for an ambulance worker in Ireland today. The unions have had this really long-standing grievance that pay for paramedics and ambulance staff just hasn't kept pace with the massive changes in what they're actually asked to do every single day. The job has evolved so much, The medical interventions they're performing on the side of the road are incredibly advanced now. But the workers are arguing that a starting wage of $33K simply does not reflect that modern reality or the incredibly heavy responsibilities resting on their shoulders when they turn up at a family's front door in a crisis. And that brings us to exactly why the workers firmly rejected that WRC deal. It wasn't just about the money on the table, it was all about the strings attached to it. The deal demanded a commitment to future pay and grade reforms. So from the employees' point of view, they felt they were being asked to, as the brilliant old phrase goes, buy a pig in a poke. They were essentially being asked to blindly sign up to restructuring and changes that hadn't even been fully mapped out yet. For working people just trying to secure their livelihoods, agreeing to totally unseen future conditions was simply a step too far. So here we have the absolute core of the divide, laid out plainly for us. On one side, the workers are seeking concrete recompense for the massive role changes and the upskilling they've already undertaken over the last few years. Basically, they want to be paid for the job they're doing right now. On the flip side, the employers, the HSE, and the government are insisting that any comprehensive deal absolutely has to include a firm commitment to future pay and grade reforms. They want modernized structures going forward. Neither side is budging an inch, and that fundamentally differing view, whether to pay for the past or negotiate for the future, is exactly what brought the ambulances to a halt. Section 3, Escalation, and Next Steps. Let's look at what this unresolved divide means for us in the coming weeks. If you thought the recent disruption was tough, this coming timeline shows a really clear escalation. We had that initial 24-hour stoppage on May 13th, but further, much more severe stoppages are absolutely in the offing. A 48-hour strike is planned for May 19th, and then a massive 72-hour action is slated for May 26th. This is a very clear, deliberate escalation designed to put maximum pressure on the government to reopen the agreement. But obviously, as the hours of strike action double and then triple, the potential for serious disruption to emergency coverage for families across the island increases exponentially. The stakes are getting much, much higher for everyone involved here. So the crucial point is how this gets sorted before those major strikes hit. At some stage, a solution simply has to be found, right? Step one is what's happening right now, the intervention of the labor court. Both sides desperately need to engage with this process to find some sort of common ground. But step two is the ticking clock in the background. The current, broader public sector pay deal expires in July. Whatever solution is found for the ambulance workers might ultimately have to form part of the successor to that larger national agreement. The window to get this fixed is incredibly tight.
Which leaves us with this really pressing question to finish on. Can a solution be found before these strikes escalate and seriously impact emergency coverage for families right across the country? It's such a delicate and deeply serious balance between the fundamental rights of workers trying to make a fair living and the absolute imperative of public safety for every single citizen in Ireland. Thanks a million for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it helped clarify exactly what's going on, and I'll see you next time.